Hi, welcome back. This is part 2 on how to approach your company about wanting to relocate to the USA. In the last video, I spoke about phase 1, and phase 1 of that approach is really building your value. I truly believe that before you rock up to work one day, especially in a new company, and start saying that you would like the opportunity to relocate, that you think about your value to the company and build that value first before you start speaking about it. In this video, I'm going to share my story about how I got my relocation. Hopefully that will give you some perspective about the things that I encountered along my journey, how long it took, and what I would say is patience is definitely required. The first thing that I will start in my story is that when I joined this particular company, although I knew I wanted to move to the USA at some point, I was in no immediate rush. A lot of you guys that message us on the channel speak about how do you find the right company, that you've joined this very specific company so that you can get the relocation specifically. In my case, I believe I was about 25 when I joined this company. I was at the very beginning of my career. I definitely didn't join that company thinking I want to relocate immediately. So the first thing to note is that is probably a bit of a difference between where I was at versus where some of you guys are coming from. The other thing to note is at that point in my career, I was at the very beginning. I had qualified in a particular area at university. I had a very focused field, and my options of what I could do at that point in time were quite limited. And I probably had the perspective as well at that point that that was all I could do, that you have this particular type of role and that's a very niche area and I have to super be laser focused on that. Of course, over time and as you grow your career, you realize there are many other things that you can do. The most important thing at that time was I was just focused on my career. It wasn't the relocation. After about 2.5 years, I did apply for my first role in the US. So during this time, I was working, I was doing a good job. I can't say everything that I was doing, I was hyper focused on being amazing or being successful. I was just being me and doing my job, trying to do the best. At the same time, I was mindful of these other people working in the company that would get the opportunity to move. I was always looking on their website, on the internal intranet for job opportunities in the US. And this is where it's linked to what I've just said about your career at that moment in time when you're quite junior, is that I was also looking for jobs that I literally qualified for. As in, what's the job that I do today? And I was looking at a job and I was checking all the requirements, and in my head, I thought it has to be a job that I qualify for. And I don't know if that's a female thing more than a male thing, because I hear from male counterparts that they will say, no, we will just go for jobs that even we don't qualify for. But I definitely had it in my head that I could only apply for a job that I qualified for. And at that point, 2.5 years in, I did see this job in the USA. It would have been a slight progression for me, but it was very much well within my qualifications and the requirements of the role. So I went ahead and I applied. I told my manager that I was applying for this job in the USA. The interview went well. I actually remember, I believe I did the interview from Egypt. Me and Ant were on holiday and I took the interview from there. And as I said, the interview went well, but I did not get it. Their feedback was essentially that the interview went well, I met all the requirements, but the visa was the huge factor. What I appreciate now is that I would have needed a H-1B visa, very different to the visa that I've come to the USA on an L1A. And the time it would have taken, the guarantee of me getting that visa would have been difficult. And they had somebody else that had gone for the job that met the requirements too, that could move into that role a lot sooner than me. So this is again something that when you're going through this journey, you need to appreciate from the company's perspective, that how easy is it to get somebody across. And even though I met all the requirements and they liked me, if I'm being honest, there was nothing very special about me in that role at that point. There were probably tens of other people that met the requirements of that role. So I can fully understand that why would they invest the time for something that so many other people could do? Why would they invest the time in sending me across? And not only the time, the money. Something I have a huge appreciation for now is the type of visa you get to the USA on. Now, let's just assume they were really struggling at that point in time and they thought, you know what, we'll offer you the job and whether it takes 3 to 6 months to get you over, we'll do it. The issue is that that type of visa wouldn't have been so easy for us to transition to a green card. And for those of you that have been following our journey, you will know how much I advocate for, as soon as you get here, try to make the steps to get onto a green card. Now, on a H1B, it's not impossible. It's very, very possible to get a green card. I know other people that have done it, but an L1A is so much easier. And it's one of the things, as soon as I got my L1A, everyone said, apply for the green card because it's so easy. After that, I refocused my attention. It's not that I wasn't looking out for other jobs in the USA, but I really refocused on my career in the UK, which I actually was really enjoying. Over the years, I then transitioned through a number of roles, and I would say after about 3 years is where I really saw a difference in my career in terms of the skill set that I acquired, my network, value, seeing the link here to phase one. Really during that time is when I got my first management role, and I was managing a team across quite a large regions. And again, this is something that really contributed to my value and my expertise, because what I hadn't realized at that point was that was going to be the reason why I ended up getting the job in the USA. It was because of my knowledge of running teams and what I knew about different markets in comparison to people in the USA. And this is the difference between the job that I ended up getting versus the initial job that I went for after 2.5 years. I would also admit, whilst I was aware that at any point he would have jumped on that plane and moved to the USA, he hated England, he was desperate to leave. I, on the other hand, was having pretty much a great time. I loved my job, I loved the people I was working with, and I was traveling all the time. I was barely in the UK. I really had no complaints. In some ways, this caused an issue because things were going so well. I started to doubt whether moving to the USA was the right decision. My career was growing quite well, and I just had it in my head that if I moved to the USA, that suddenly everything would be stunted. Obviously now I think that's ridiculous. That is so not true. If you are good at work, that's not going to change just because you relocate. But I definitely started to have doubts about the impact of moving, and I didn't feel ready to move to the USA. I would say about 6 or 7 years in of working at this company, I started to travel a lot to the USA. My team was often working with a global team and a corporate team from the US. That gave me the opportunity to meet more people and expand my network. So this is another difference between when I initially applied for that first role where no one knew me to where I had got after 7 years, where people actually knew me in the USA and had experience of interacting with me and working with me. It also gave me peace of mind that the colleagues over there in the US, that they were great people, that I liked them, and it gave me a sense of whether I would even want to work in the USA. During this time, I was still looking for jobs that were being advertised. And what's interesting about that is you think in your mind you're being active and you're constantly looking, but in the end, that wasn't the way that I got my relocation. The relocation came from the network I had made and those managers approaching me. Another thing to note is there wasn't this particular day or time where I suddenly made it known to the company or my manager that I wanted to move. So a lot of people will ask, well, how do you approach that? Over time, people just knew. I had applied for the job 2.5 years in. When anyone would ask me whether I would be willing or what I'm looking for in the future, I would just bring it up. It was a very natural conversation. I didn't make a thing about wanting to move to the USA I need a meeting with the manager or HR and I need to discuss this relocation. I was doing my job, I was doing well at my job, and I openly spoke about when it made sense that I would be willing to move to the USA if the right role came about. After about 7 or 8 years of working for this company, as I mentioned, I transitioned through various roles, gained different skills. I was managing a team, not only just managing a team in a small region, but a large geographical region as well. I also had experience in SaaS, software as a service, which at that time for our industry was quite niche. This is just a tip for you guys. If you can get the opportunity to be part of something that is quite new in your industry and gain those expertise, take it. I wouldn't say it was strategic on my part in that I knew what I was doing. Somebody approached me and said, oh, would I be interested in doing business development for this particular thing? I didn't even know what SaaS was back then, had no clue. And I said, yes, I was open to it because I was always open to learning something new. And again, it's another thing that I look back on and realize, wow, that decision to learn about SaaS is what ultimately got me to the USA. At this point, I had people in my region, a good network that would advocate for me, my manager, my manager's manager, but also I had people in the USA that knew me anyway, which was great. But the reality was I was still reluctant to really push for a role. For those of you that have watched our story when me and Anne had spoken about what prompted the move, it was really Anne's mini meltdown. I think it was in 2019. He was on this journey to Wales, I think, with his brother. It went horrifically wrong. There was traffic, there was rain. He's like, I'm out of here, I'm leaving, I'm selling up, I'm going. I'm like, whoa, calm down. Let's see what we can do. Let's do this in the right way. And that really was the trigger for me. I thought, okay, I need to do something. That is when I started speaking directly to managers. Earlier, I had mentioned that I was always looking for roles being advertised. And I think that is actually probably the wrong way to go about it. You need to be ahead. Even I know this when I'm putting jobs out. I already have somebody in mind sometimes for these roles. So you really do need to be approaching hiring managers in the USA, saying that you would love the opportunity. These are your skill sets. These are the types of roles. And also don't narrow yourself down to the exact role that you're in today and think, oh, I can just do that in the USA. Maybe your role can translate into other things. I've personally gone from really different types of roles, from being a trainer, help desk, consultancy work, sales, marketing. That can help you in your move to the USA. So it's the summer of 2019. Anton has just had his mini meltdown and I have said to him, look, just give me a year. I will try and work out how I can get a job in the USA. And the timing was just right because I was traveling almost every other month, I believe, to the USA for various meetings. And when I was there, I would openly discuss with people to let me know if there was a job that they thought I was appropriate for. That summer, there was a project coming up, this new initiative that they were funding in terms of business transformation around SaaS. And they were specifically looking for people that had experience, which was quite limited at that time in our industry, in our company. And they wanted people to join this project from different areas of the business. And we would be doing these various sprints, meeting every month. A lot of the meetings were going to happen in the USA. I remember saying to Anne, oh, should I go for this project? And he was like, yes, do it. I actually had doubts in my head whether I would be good enough. It's weird, those weird things that go on in your head when you think that possibly that you don't meet the requirements, that you're suddenly going to be in that team of people that are so much more knowledgeable than you. I wasn't super confident. That was the real reality. I spoke to Anne and he said, no, you can definitely do this. Speak to the manager. So I approached him and essentially said I would be interested, but also said that I would be willing to move to the USA, that I would like to move to the USA. And he explained to me that the aim of this project was to make permanent positions and that he would absolutely advocate for a relocation package for me if he gets approval for this headcount. And so I told my manager, and then literally within, I think, 3 months, they had approved the headcount and I got my relocation. The great thing about that particular project was that it was touching almost every area of the business. So it gave me the opportunity to meet lots of different people. So even before I'd had that definitive offer, I knew it would make sense just from meeting lots of people and building my network. And I remember whilst I was doing the project, because I was doing that 50-50 with my current role from Europe, when I would be traveling to the US and would be messaging me saying, just stay longer, because he really wanted me to get this job and the relocation. That the way that he saw it is, leverage the opportunity. Don't just go there for the meeting and return. Go there, spend more time, because the more time you're there, the more chance you have to spend time with people, get to know more people. And if this didn't work out, then maybe there would be another opportunity. So this is where I would definitely say to you guys is maximize, because you never know what can go wrong. Obviously that did work well for me, but what if it didn't go ahead? This is where you have to truly think about that moment in time and seize every opportunity. Now, something else that had actually happened at that time, and this is just, I guess, how things can work out sometimes. I had also approached another manager, I think about a month before that, maybe 2 months before, and she had also said to me that she was building out her team and there was going to be this director role coming up in the USA, but she was waiting for approval of that headcount. So what actually happened in the middle of me doing this project, waiting for a job to come up, for the permanent headcount to come up, she had also approached me because her job had then been approved, and she'd sent me the job spec and she said, look, we'd be really interested in you applying for that job. So I actually ended up with 2 opportunities at the same time. It just goes to show, put yourself out there, let people know, because if that had fallen through, I did have something else that I could have gone for as well. And to end my story, in January of 2020, I think about less than 6 months-ish, I don't know if that was timing me, I managed to get my contract for the USA with the relocation. And this is the point at which I find out the type of visa that I'm on, the L1A. Irrespective of if I'd got a job sooner and it was a different visa, I would have taken it. We would have taken it, definitely. But it did make things a lot easier now in terms of getting the green card. So this, like I said earlier, it is something to consider in terms of your patience with a role. It may seem that you want everything immediately now. What I recognize for us is our journey taking a bit longer has benefited us in the long run in terms of the types of jobs I can go for, the fact that I could get the L1A, the fact that I am already on a green card, and I just have so much more available to me in the types of roles compared to had I have done this 8 years sooner. So that is my story on how I got my relocation to the USA. I believe I was with the company 8 years before I got my relocation. So it definitely took some patience and it was definitely worth it in the end. And what I didn't know when I was going to share this story was just how much that aligned with what I said in the first video about building your value. I truly believe that I got to the USA because of those things. Thanks for watching.